Thomas had always believed that some memories were loud, so loud they echoed long after the moment had passed. The night Amanda vanished, the silence that followed was louder than any scream he had ever heard. For 21 years, that silence stalked him. Every night, every dawn, every time he closed his eyes. People said he'd gone mad searching for answers. Maybe he had, but when a forgotten piece of evidence resurfaced, something the police had missed back in 2003, Thomas felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Hope, and a terror he didn't yet understand. Thomas Everett had lived most of his adult life like a man suspended between two worlds. The world before Amanda disappeared, and the one after. Before her disappearance, he was a quiet, soft-spoken carpenter with sawdust in his hair and a smile he saved only for her. Amanda Cain was the opposite, radiant, talkative, and full of wild ideas that challenged the quiet corners of his mind. She believed in things unseen, fate, soul connections, the unexplainable threads between two people. They had grown up as neighbors in the sleepy town of Ridgewater, a place untouched by time. As teenagers, they had carved their initials into the ancient oak tree near the riverbank. T+A, forever in the bark. Nobody thought much of the two, just another small-town love story, one that everyone expected to lead to a wedding, kids, and the usual Ridgewater script. But on October 17, 2003, at exactly 9:47 p.m., Ridgewater changed. And Thomas changed with it. It was the kind of cold autumn night where the air bit at your skin, where even the river seemed to shiver under the moonlight. Amanda had asked Thomas to meet her by the oak tree. "I need to tell you something important," she said. Something in her voice had trembled. Something he couldn't place. He remembered wrapping his jacket tighter as he approached the riverbank. The tree stood tall, a silent witness waiting in the shadows. But Amanda wasn't there. Not at first. Then he heard her voice. Soft, almost apologetic. "Tom, I'm sorry." He spun around. Amanda stood a few feet away, her auburn hair catching the moonlight like a burning halo. But her eyes, those warm, fearless eyes, held something unfamiliar. "Fee, sorry for what?" he asked, stepping toward her. But she shook her head, backing away. "Tom, they're watching." It wasn't the sentence that terrified him. It was the way she said they, like it wasn't just one person, like it was something bigger, something closing in. "Amanda, who's watching? Talk to me." She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered three words that never left Thomas's mind. "It's too late." A crack of a twig, a sudden rustle. Her eyes went wide, and then darkness. Not for her. For him. Something struck the back of his head. Hard. The world collapsed around him in a swirl of dead leaves and river mist. He fought to stay conscious, reaching toward the blurred outline of Amanda, but his body was too heavy and his vision faded. When he woke up, the sun was rising. Amanda was gone. The police labeled Thomas as a person of interest within hours. After all, he was the last one to see her, the boyfriend, the emotional tether that investigators always grabbed first. He told them everything, about her fear, her words, the sensation of being watched. But something in his story didn't fit their narrative. They found no footprints, no signs of struggle, no trace of Amanda's last steps. And worst of all, there was no weapon, no blood, nothing to prove Thomas had been attacked. The town split in two. Half believed Thomas was hiding something. Half believed Amanda had simply run away. But Thomas knew something the others didn't. Amanda didn't run. She never would have. He spent the next 21 years hunting for the truth, reading case files, interviewing retired officers, tracking rumors, revisiting old memories. While Ridgewater forgot about Amanda, he refused to. But the truth stayed hidden. Until now. On the 21st anniversary of Amanda's disappearance, Thomas received a small brown envelope with no return address. Inside was a single item, a rusted key. Attached to it, a small, aged tag with 3 words written in Amanda's handwriting. "For when ready." Thomas dropped the key. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. He knew Amanda's handwriting better than his own. He had read every yearbook message she left him, every birthday card, every note she'd scribble on the back of diner napkins. But this tag wasn't from 2003. This ink was darker, fresher. This tag was new. His hands trembled as he flipped the key over. On the back, carved faintly into the metal, were 4 numbers. October 17th. The night she disappeared. He didn't know whether to collapse or scream. Someone had been watching him all these years. Someone had kept something that belonged to Amanda. And someone wanted him to reopen the case. The key fit a small, forgotten storage unit on the outskirts of town, Unit 1017. The lock cracked open with a sound that echoed through the empty corridor. Inside, the air smelled like dust and time. The unit was nearly empty, except for one box. A white shoe box with Amanda's favorite flower, lilies, sketched delicately on the lid. He knew that drawing. She used to doodle lilies on the edges of her notebooks when she was bored in class. Thomas knelt, breath shaking, and opened it. Inside were items he hadn't seen since he was 18. Amanda's silver bracelet, bent out of shape. A torn corner of her red hoodie. A Polaroid picture of the riverbank. And a cassette tape. The tape was labeled, "Play me, Tom." His heart pounded. His fingers almost refused to move. He slid the cassette into an old portable player sitting beside the box, as if whoever left these items knew he wouldn't have one of his own. Static. Then a voice. Amanda's voice. "Tom, if you're hearing this, something has gone wrong." His blood ran cold. "I didn't run away. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had no choice. They're watching everything." Another voice, faint, whispered behind her. "Keep recording. We don't have much time." Amanda continued, "Please don't trust anyone in town. Not even the ones you think you should." Then, a loud bang. A scream. Footsteps. The tape cut off. Thomas stared at the player, his breath ragged, a storm of emotions tearing through him. Fear, hope, anger, love, all tangled together in a knot he could no longer untie. She had been alive after that night. Alive long enough to record a message. But who was she with? Who were they? And why did she warn him not to trust anyone in Ridgewater? Thomas took the items to the new sheriff, Lena Harrow, who had just taken over the cold case files. She was young, determined, and uncorrupted by decades of small-town politics. When she saw the box, her face paled. "These items, Thomas, they were all logged as missing evidence 20 years ago," she whispered. "Someone removed them from the original evidence locker." "Who?" he asked. She swallowed hard. The person who had access back then was Sheriff Dalton. Sheriff Dalton, who had abruptly retired in 2004. Sheriff Dalton, who had led Amanda's investigation. Sheriff Dalton, who had publicly accused Thomas of lying. But there was something else. Sheriff Dalton was dying, and he was still living in Ridgewater. Sheriff Harrow warned Thomas not to confront him alone. But Thomas didn't care. He had waited 21 years for answers. He wasn't waiting one more minute. Dalton's house sat on the edge of the forest, old and rotting. Thomas knocked hard. After a long pause, the door opened. Dalton stood frail, leaning on a cane, his eyes sunken. "You, Thomas Everett," he rasped. Thomas stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "You took evidence from Amanda's case. Why?" Dalton sank into an armchair. "I took it because someone told me to," he said, voice trembling. "Someone more powerful than you can imagine." "Who?" Dalton shook his head. "Thomas, the night Amanda disappeared, she wasn't supposed to meet you. She was trying to run, trying to warn you. She found out something she shouldn't have." Thomas's heart hammered. What did she find out? Dalton's breathing grew shallow. "There's a reason she chose that night. October 17th. It wasn't random. Nothing about that night was random." Thomas leaned forward. "Tell me what happened." Dalton opened his mouth. But before he could speak, a window shattered. A shadow moved past the doorway. A single gunshot cracked the air. Dalton collapsed, blood blooming across his shirt. Thomas froze. The killer didn't enter, didn't speak, didn't finish Thomas off. They simply fired one warning shot into the ceiling, and disappeared into the forest. Someone didn't want the truth spoken. Not tonight. Dalton's final breath left his body as he whispered, "Find the lighthouse." Thomas stumbled backward, horror twisting his stomach. There was no lighthouse in Ridgewater, but there was one a few miles outside town. Abandoned, closed off, forgotten by everyone except the old locals. And suddenly, Thomas remembered something. The lighthouse was the last place he and Amanda explored together as kids. A place she said felt like destiny. Now he knew why. The lighthouse had been condemned for years, its staircase rusted and broken. Thomas pushed open the door. Inside, dust floated like ghosts in the cold air. He found old boot prints on the floor. Fresh. Someone had been here. Recently. He climbed the stairs cautiously, every creak echoing down the spiral. Halfway up, he heard something, metal scraping on stone. At the top, he expected emptiness. Instead, he found a room filled with papers, maps, photographs, and a large corkboard with Amanda's name pinned in red. Everywhere. Notes, dates, surveillance photos. Someone had been tracking her, not just before she disappeared, but long after. Thomas's eyes caught on one picture, Amanda standing outside a hospital in 2008. 5 years after the night at the river. He staggered backward. Amanda had been alive even longer than he guessed, and someone documented every moment. Until suddenly, the door below slammed shut. Thomas spun. Footsteps echoed up the stairs. Slow, deliberate. He wasn't alone in the lighthouse, and whoever was coming up the steps knew he was there. A shadow appeared on the staircase wall. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Thomas backed into the corner, fingers closing around the heavy, rusted wrench lying on the table. The figure reached the top of the stairs, and Thomas realized, with a jolt of terror, that he recognized the silhouette. The person stepped into the light. "Thomas," the figure whispered, "we need to talk about Amanda." Thomas's grip tightened. He could barely breathe, because the person standing in front of him, the person who had been following Amanda for years, was someone he never expected. Fade to black. To be continued.